I did not begin with the microscope. I began with a street, a narrow London street, wet underfoot, thick with smoke, horses, sewage, market noise, and the kind of smell people had learned to stop noticing because the whole city breathed it. They told me it was the air. Everyone told me it was the air, the poor air, the poisoned air, the invisible cloud that crept through windows and under doors and found the weak first. But I had walked through enough sick rooms to know that fear often chooses the nearest explanation. The air was filthy. No man with honest lungs could deny that. But the pattern was wrong. The deaths did not spread like a fog. They gathered, street by street, house by house, door by door. And at the center of it all stood a water pump. A simple iron handle on Broad Street. The kind of thing a child could use without thinking. The kind of thing a mother trusted before filling a kettle. The kind of thing a city touched every day and never feared. That was what frightened me most. Not the smell, not the shouting, not the carts. The ordinary thing. The handle. My name is John Snow. I am a physician in London, though London has never made the work easy. A doctor in this city learns to walk quickly, listen carefully, and enter rooms where hope has already grown thin. I had seen cholera before, too many times. It came like a thief with no face. A person could be standing in the morning and gone before night. Whole households changed in a day. Streets that had been loud became cautious. Doors stayed half open because someone was either calling for help or too afraid to ask. Most men around me believed the disease rode on foul air, miasma, bad smells, rot, filth rising from drains and cesspools and the river itself. It was an easy belief to hold in London. The city offered evidence with every breath. The Thames stank. The alleys stank. The yards behind houses stank. The poor lived pressed between walls that held damp, waste, smoke, and too many bodies. If a man said the air was killing us, no one laughed. The air seemed guilty enough. But I could not make peace with that answer. Not because I was certain of everything. I was not. Certainty is often what men use when they are tired of looking. I had questions. Questions are less comfortable than beliefs. They keep you awake. Before Broad Street, I had argued that cholera entered the body through something swallowed. Water, food, something taken in, not merely breathed. Many did not accept it. Why would they? A theory that cannot be smelled feels weak beside a stench strong enough to make a man cover his face. But disease does not care what seems reasonable. It follows its own road. And if a doctor is useful for anything, he must learn to follow before he explains. At first, the outbreak was only a whisper carried between houses, a sudden illness, then another, then too many. By the time I reached a neighborhood around Broad Street, the whisper had become a knocking sound, knuckles on doors, feet on stairs, voices in hallways, someone asking for the doctor, someone asking for the priest, someone asking why it had happened so quickly. I remember the faces more than the numbers. Numbers came later. The faces came first. A woman standing in a doorway with her sleeves rolled up, looking at me as if I had brought an answer in my coat pocket. A man who kept repeating the same name because he could not yet understand that repeating it would not bring the person back. A child watching adults move too quickly around a bed. I will not dress the rooms in horror. There was already enough horror in how quiet they became. Illness has a sound. So does a room after illness has passed through it. A chair left pulled back. A cup untouched. A blanket folded by someone who no longer knows what to do with their hands. I carried a notebook. It seems small now, almost insulting. A notebook against a plague. Paper against panic, ink against a city's fear. But when men are afraid, they reach for stories. A doctor must reach for patterns. I asked where people had lived. I asked when the illness began. I asked where they drew their water. I asked if they drank from the pump. Again and again, the same street returned. The same pump. The same center. Broad Street. At times, people answered me with impatience. They had buried neighbors. They had watched families break open in a matter of hours. They did not want a man standing in the doorway asking about water. I understood that. Grief does not appreciate investigation. But grief also cannot protect the living unless someone is willing to ask cold questions in warm rooms. So I asked, and I wrote, door after door, name after name, mark after mark. London moved around me, but I began to see another city beneath it. Not the city of buildings, the city of deaths. A city drawn in ink. A city where each black mark was a life. That was when the map began to form in my mind, not as a clever instrument, not as something future men would praise. It began as a desperate attempt to see what the eye could not hold all at once. One house was grief. 10 houses were dread. 100 marks became a shape, and the shape pointed, not to the wind, not to a smell, to water. To the pump. The strange thing was that the street itself did not confess. Broad Street looked like a street. People still moved through it. Horses still passed. Doors still opened. Men still carried things. Women still crossed with pails and baskets. The pump stood there in public, innocent as iron. There was no sign above it saying danger, no color in the water, no visible warning. A deadly thing can look clean in a cup. That thought stayed with me. It still does. The mind expects danger to announce itself. A dark stain, a foul taste, a sound, a wound in the world. But the most dangerous things I have known often arrived politely, in a glass, in a routine, in something already trusted. When I told men the pump might be the source, some looked at me as if I had missed the obvious truth.
The air was bad. Had I not smelled it?
The drains were foul. Had I not walked the same streets? People believed in miasma not because they were stupid, but because the city made the theory feel true. Every breath supported it. Every alley argued for it. Every dirty yard seemed to stand in court and accuse the air. But evidence is not the same as atmosphere. The air was everywhere. The deaths were not. That was the crack in the old belief. I followed the crack. There were exceptions, of course. There are always exceptions. A person who lived far from the pump but drank from it because they preferred its water. A place close by where few were struck because they did not use the pump. A workhouse nearby where many people lived together, yet the pattern did not fit what foul air alone would have predicted. A brewery where men drank more beer than pump water, and the deaths were not what one would expect if the neighborhood air itself were the killer. Each exception mattered, not because it made the case simple, because it made the case human. People do not live in theories. They live in habits. They walk to one pump instead of another. They trust a familiar taste. They send a servant to fetch water. They give a child a cup. They choose, without knowing they are choosing, the route a disease will take. That was the part that haunted me. No one had opened the pump with malice. No one had carried the water home thinking it could harm them. A mother does not fear the handle she has used every day. A man does not question the bucket he fills before work. The ordinary is powerful because it asks no permission. By then, the neighborhood was changing. You could feel it, not only in the number of funerals, but in the way people looked at one another. Fear makes neighbors study each other's faces. Who is ill? Who is next? Which house has the mark of death behind its curtains? Some left if they could. Some could not. Poverty is often the difference between escaping danger and waiting for it to choose you. That thought did not make my work easier. It made it heavier. I was not investigating an idea. I was walking through people's lives at the moment they were being broken. There is a temptation in medicine to make suffering tidy, to turn the sick into cases, the dead into numbers, the neighborhood into a diagram. I needed the numbers. I needed the diagram. But every mark on my map had once opened a door, crossed a room, spoken to someone, worried about money, complained about the weather, expected another morning. A map can reveal a truth. It can also hide the weight of that truth if a man forgets what the marks mean. I tried not to forget. As the evidence gathered, my fear changed. At first, I feared being wrong. Then, I feared being right too late. That is a particular kind of dread. To see a pattern forming while the city still argues with you. To know that each hour spent debating may become another room gone quiet.
I had no miracle to offer, no cure to place in every hand,
No modern laboratory to reveal the enemy under glass. I had interviews, records, a map, a suspicion, and a handle. That was the question. Could one piece of iron be worth challenging a city's belief? Could removing a pump handle do what arguments had not done? I went to the local authorities with what I had, not with poetry, not with certainty dressed as pride, with evidence. Deaths near the pump, families who drank from it, people farther away who had still received its water, places nearby that had been spared because their habits were different, a pattern too strong to ignore. I do not remember every face in that room. I remember the feeling. Men weighing death against doubt.
men who did not want to act without certainty.
Men who knew that if they were wrong, they would be remembered as fools. I knew that feeling well. Every doctor knows it. But there are moments when waiting for perfect proof becomes a decision of its own. And that decision has consequences. The handle was removed. It was such a small act, a tool taken from a pump. No army, no great machine, no speech to the crowds, just the disabling of a thing people had trusted. I have often thought about how history sometimes turns on objects too ordinary to notice. A key, a letter, a door left open, a pump handle. After it was gone, the street did not become safe all at once. No street becomes safe by magic. People had already left.
The outbreak had already begun to decline in some ways.
Disease never arranges itself neatly for the satisfaction of those who study it. But the act mattered. It said the water could be guilty. It said the invisible root of disease could be traced. It said that a doctor must look not only at the body, but at the street, the habit, the source, the path. And most of all, it said that prevention could be an act of courage. Not dramatic courage, not battlefield courage, the quieter kind. The kind that removes a handle before everyone agrees. The days after were not triumphant. Triumph is a word people use after they have forgotten the rooms. I did not feel victorious walking those streets. I felt tired. I felt watched by the dead.
I felt the strange heaviness that comes when an answer arrives after so many cannot be saved by it.
The living want proof. The dead leave it. That is the cruel bargain of investigation. Every conclusion is built from what has already happened. Every mark on my map came too late for the person it represented. I could not change that. I could only try to make the marks mean something for the next door. The argument did not end with Broad Street. Many still believed in bad air. Many still could not accept that water clear enough to drink could carry destruction. Even after the handle was gone, belief did not vanish like steam. Men hold old ideas tightly because old ideas have protected them from confusion. To abandon one is to admit the world has been more dangerous than they understood.
I do not judge them as harshly as I once did.
Fear is not always loud. Sometimes fear sounds like certainty. But I had seen the map. I had walked the streets. I had listened to mothers, widowers, workers, children, servants, shopkeepers, men too tired to argue and women too numb to cry. I had seen the disease gather around a habit, around a place, around a pump. Once you have seen a pattern like that, you cannot unsee it. London, for all its noise, became quieter to me afterward. Not because the city changed, because I had learned to hear it differently. The splash of water in a bucket, the scrape of a handle, the sound of a cup being filled. These were no longer harmless sounds. They were questions. Where did it come from? Who touched it?
Who drank it? Who will be blamed when the answer is too small to see?
People often imagine discovery as a bright moment, a candle suddenly lit, a man standing still knowing he has found the truth. For me, it was not like that. It was slower, darker, built from unease, built from doubt, built from walking, asking, writing, returning, checking again. A truth in public health rarely arrives as thunder.
It arrives as repetition, the same answer from different doors, the same mark appearing too close to the last, the same street pulling your eyes back again and again until denial becomes more difficult than belief. That is what Broad Street gave me, not comfort, direction. Years later, men may speak of this as a beginning. They may say it helped shape a new way of seeing disease. They may say maps and interviews and careful counts became weapons of medicine. Perhaps that is true, but I did not walk those streets thinking of history. I walked them because people were dying and the air was too easy an answer. I walked them because a doctor must sometimes distrust what everyone can smell in order to find what no one can see. I walked them because the city was full of voices, and beneath them was a quieter voice saying, "Look closer, look at the water, look at the habits, look at the marks, look where the grief gathers." That is where the truth may be standing, not in a palace, not in a laboratory, not behind a grand theory. Sometimes the truth stands on a street corner, made of iron, touched by hundreds of hands, waiting for someone to ask why the dead live so close to it. I still remember Broad Street most clearly in fragments. The wet stones, the dark windows, the smell everyone trusted too much as an explanation, the sound of my pencil, the pump standing silent after the handle was taken. A city does not apologize when it learns something. It simply continues. Carts move, markets open, children grow, new illnesses come. Old theories find new clothes, but somewhere beneath that continuation, a small change remains. A doctor remembers, a street remembers, a map remembers, and if we are fortunate, the living learn before the next silence. History remembers the pump. I remember the doors, each one I knocked on, each one that opened too late, and each black mark that taught me the dead had been pointing to the water all along.